Jimin and Jungkook are caught holding hands backstage again. Whispers turn into gasps as secrets, tension, and loyalty threaten to unravel everything. Let go, someone's coming. The urgent whisper sliced through the low hum of backstage chatter, barely audible above the thrum of bass leaking from the main stage. But it was too late. The silver curtain had parted just enough for the overhead spotlight to slice across the floor and illuminate two hands tightly intertwined. Jimin froze, his breath caught in his throat, his iridescent jacket catching the light like shattered glass. Jungkook didn't move. His fingers tightened around Jimin's as if the moment could be preserved if only he held on hard enough. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and in it, a storm passed. "Hyung," Jungkook whispered, but the word collapsed before it reached safety. The room fell into an eerie silence. It wasn't just any staff member who saw them. It was Manager Do, an ex-military perfectionist who'd once canceled a showcase because someone wore mismatched socks. His brows knit together, the clipboard in his hand dipping slightly as his eyes scanned the locked hands like a detective uncovering contraband. No one moved. No one spoke. Behind them, the muffled roar of thousands of fans outside the arena continued, oblivious to the crack that had just formed in the fortress of Bangtan's carefully polished image. Jimin stepped back first, his hand slipping from Jungkook's with a quiet finality. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture faltered. He adjusted his mic, as if nothing had happened. But his fingers shook. "I'll go check the set list," he said. Voice even, but too calm, too controlled. A rehearsed detachment. He walked away without waiting for a response. Jungkook stood there, frozen, alone. Manager Do said nothing. He simply turned around and left the way he came, the curtain fluttering behind him like the tail of a ghost. That should have been the end of it. But in the dressing room, a silence thicker than any fog wrapped itself around the seven of them. Taehyung was the first to speak, of course. He always was. "Was that what I think it was?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes searching. Namjoon didn't look up from his phone. "This isn't the time." Yoongi stood by the mirror, arms crossed, watching Jimin's reflection instead of Jimin himself. "He's not going to drop it," he said flatly. "Do's been looking for a reason." "A reason for what?" Hobie asked, confused. "To separate them," Yoongi replied, as if it were obvious, as if it hadn't already happened before. Across the room, Jungkook sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His knuckles were white. Jimin hadn't come back yet. Jungkook's heart pounded like a war drum. But it wasn't fear. Not really. It was the aftershock of something heavier. Shame? Defiance? He couldn't tell anymore. He hated how his hand still remembered the warmth, the subtle tremble in Jimin's palm. He hated that he didn't regret it. A flashback struck him unbidden. The two of them behind the rehearsal mirrors last month. Jimin whispering something about just a minute longer before pulling his hand away as the door creaked. Always hiding. Always afraid of being seen. He was tired of hiding. "Let them separate us," he muttered. Namjoon finally looked up. "That's not how this works, Jungkook." "No?" His voice rose, uncharacteristically sharp. "Then how does it work, Hyung? How many times do I have to pretend we're just brothers? That it doesn't mean anything?" Silence. Only Jin dared to answer softly. "Until it's safe." Jungkook looked at him, eyes wide, almost betrayed. Will it ever be? The question hung in the air like smoke. At that moment, Jimin returned, his face carefully composed. The kind of calm you only wear after surviving a storm you can't speak of. "Stage call in 5, he announced, not looking at anyone in particular. His eyes never met Jungkook's. But as they lined up behind the stage curtain, Jungkook stood close behind him. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from Jimin's skin. Close enough to hear the sharp inhale when his fingers brushed Jimin's. And when the lights dimmed and the cue rang out across the stadium, just before they stepped onto the stage, Jimin's hand found his again. For just a second. And this time, neither of them let go. Not until the music started. Not until they were blinded by the lights again. I saw them. The whisper spread like smoke behind velvet curtains, backstage cables, and tightly sealed production rooms. Every crew member acted like they didn't care, like idols holding hands was nothing. But everyone had seen the clip. 5 seconds, leaked, cropped, slowed down, and looped across anonymous accounts on Twitter, TikTok, and shady fan forums by morning. It was unmistakable. Jungkook. Jimin. Fingers laced. And a single frame, a smirk on Jungkook's lips, as if he dared the whole damn world to question it. The next morning, the big hit building felt colder than usual. Not from the air conditioning, but from the silence that greeted them all. The kind that curled under the skin. Jimin stepped into the conference room last, hoodie pulled low, sunglasses still on even indoors. Jungkook was already there, arms folded, eyes distant. Namjoon sat at the head of the table, jaw tight, phone on speaker. No one had said anything. Not yet. Manager Do stood by the door like a prison warden. So, a voice crackled through the speakerphone. It was Director Yoon from PR, usually calm, now audibly tense. We need to talk about damage control. Taehyung leaned back in his chair, unbothered, legs spread wide. Damage? They didn't commit a crime. Public perception isn't logic, Yoon snapped. You all know this. This isn't just about shipping rumors anymore. This is a liability. Yoongi snorted. Only if the company makes it one. Jimin finally pulled off his sunglasses. His eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept. Not because of the hand-holding. Not really. But because of the flood of texts, some supportive, others disgusting. Threats, fan edits. The line was gone. The audience had broken through the fourth wall, with knives in their hands and cameras in their eyes. I'll do the apology post, he said quietly, voice hoarse. No, Jungkook's voice cracked like thunder. We're not pretending again. Namjoon turned to him. This isn't about you anymore. It's about the group. You think I don't know that? Jungkook stood up so fast his chair scraped backward. Every single time we do something real, something honest, it's a king scandal. But I'm not going to stand here and apologize for touching someone I care about. Care about? Sukjin echoed, his voice low. You need to be more specific. Silence. The tension snapped, like a pulled bowstring. Jimin looked away. Director Yoon cleared her throat through the speaker. We have a scheduled live stream with Weavers in 3 days. We can spin this if we act fast. Friendly banter, stage teasing, maybe even laugh it off. Keep it ambiguous. Taehyung scoffed. You mean lie? Yes, Yoon said without hesitation. If you want to survive this, Jungkook laughed, but it was bitter. Then maybe we don't want to survive it like this. You don't get to decide that. The voice didn't come from the phone. It came from Manager Do. He stepped forward, arms folded, expression unreadable. You think you're the first idols to fall in love? He asked. You think none of us have seen it before? Fine, be in love, but not like this. Not in front of cameras. Not while the group is still under contract. Jimin's voice was a whisper. So you knew. I always knew. Do replied, looking at Jimin with something like pity. I knew the day you bruised your own hand pulling it away from him during a sound check. The day you said don't touch me, but your eyes said the opposite. Yoongi lit a cigarette. No one stopped him. The room smelled like smoke and secrets. Then why let it go on? Jungkook snapped. Because I thought you were smart enough to keep it quiet, Do said sharply. And now that it's out, the company has 2 choices. We bury it, or we bury you. Namjoon stood then. You can't threaten them like that. I'm not threatening. I'm stating the reality. The silence was a scream. Every unspoken word between them all gathered in the room like ghosts. Jimin stood. His voice didn't shake this time. Then maybe it's time we stopped being idols. The statement didn't land like a bomb. It landed like a whisper after a storm. Jungkook's eyes widened. Jimin, I'm tired, Jungkook. I'm tired of pretending. Of watching you flinch when someone touches me too long on camera. Of us pretending to be strangers in front of the world while we whisper each other's names in empty hotel rooms. Sukjin swallowed. His eyes glistened. Taehyung sat forward, suddenly serious. Then what? You want to quit, just like that? No, Jimin said, calmer now. I want to live. He turned to Jungkook. Do you? Jungkook stared at him like the world was burning. He nodded once. Yoongi's voice cut through. Then fight. The room exhaled. Later that night, the 7 of them stood on the rooftop of the dorm, the city below alive with blinking lights and invisible eyes. Once we do this, Namjoon said, there's no going back. No one ever wrote history by going backward, Jungkook replied. Taehyung raised a bottle. to the biggest scandal K-pop never saw coming. They clinked bottles, but there was no laughter, only fire in their chests. Jimin and Jungkook stood at the edge. The night wind tugged at their clothes. "Are you scared?" Jimin asked. "Yes," Jungkook said. "But not of them." He reached for his hand again. This time, they didn't let go. Even when the cameras were back on. Even when the next day's headline read, "Jimin and Jungkook refused to deny relationship, army divided." Even when the death threats poured in. Even when the fandom fractured. Even when the company pulled the brand deals and froze solo projects. They didn't let go. Because for the first time, they had decided they would rather risk everything than live a lie. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous rebellion of all. "You've just lost Japan." The words were like an earthquake inside the big hit executive boardroom, sharp, deep, and with aftershocks that would echo for weeks. Park Sang-woo, the company's head of international marketing, threw the report onto the table, his voice razor sharp. 7 canceled interviews, 3 endorsement contracts frozen, 1 label threatening breach of contract unless Jimin and Jungkook issue a joint denial public, on video, and believable. He said the last word like a bullet. No one spoke. Jimin sat still, unreadable, his hands folded in his lap. Jungkook sat beside him, one leg bouncing uncontrollably, his jaw clenched tight. Namjoon stood behind them, arms crossed like a silent wall of resistance. Yoongi, who rarely attended these meetings, leaned forward, his expression as cold as ever. "So, what you're saying," he said slowly, "is that 2 people holding hands has more impact than half the scandals in this industry?" "It's not about the hands," Sang-woo snapped. "It's about the illusion. You broke it. Fans want to believe you belong to them, not to each other." Jimin finally looked up. "Then maybe they were never real fans to begin with." Sang-woo's mouth twitched, but he didn't reply. The CEO cleared his throat. "We need a resolution before the Soldome show next week. This can't carry over into the world tour. I don't care if it's a lie, a PR stunt, or a damn wedding announcement. Just handle it." When they left the room, the tension clung to their skin like smoke. No one said a word in the elevator, not until the doors closed behind them and they reached the hallway. Jungkook punched the wall. The sound echoed down the corridor. Jimin didn't flinch. "Say something," Jungkook said, turning to him. "Anything. I don't know what to say," Jimin replied. "Everything I want to say feels like a betrayal. To me? To us." Silence. Yoongi lit a cigarette again, ignoring the no-smoking sign. "You 2 either go public with this, or one of you walks away. There's no middle ground anymore." "Yoongi," Namjoon began, but he raised a hand. "No. Let's stop pretending. This isn't just about management, or fans, or image. This is about them. They need to make a choice." Jimin looked at Jungkook, eyes searching. "Would you quit?" he asked. "If it came down to it?" Jungkook didn't hesitate. "For you?" "Yes." Jimin shook his head. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's the truth. Because if you say it out loud, it becomes real. And I don't know if I'm ready to live with that yet." Later that night, Jimin disappeared. He didn't go home, didn't text, didn't turn on his location. It wasn't until 2 a.m. that Jungkook found him on the rooftop of an old dance studio in Gangnam, one they used to rent before debut. He was sitting on the edge, headphones in, knees pulled up, staring out at the skyline. "You scared the shit out of me," Jungkook said, approaching slowly. Jimin didn't turn. "I needed to breathe." Jungkook sat beside him, the night breeze ruffling his hair. "What are we going to do?" Jimin pulled out one earbud, finally facing him. "Tell me honestly, are you ready for what this means? Not just the hate, the exile, the way people will change, the way they look at you. Forever." "I don't care. You will." Jungkook looked at him, eyes soft. "Then we'll care together." And then, slowly, like a decision made in silence, Jimin leaned his head onto Jungkook's shoulder. They didn't speak again until the sun began to rise. But the world didn't wait for them to decide. By noon the next day, a new leak exploded across social media, a private photo, grainy but unmistakable, showing Jungkook and Jimin alone on that same rooftop, heads touching, fingers entwined. No one knew who took it. No one could prove it was real. But it didn't matter. Armies shattered. Some trended supportive hashtags. Others demanded contract terminations. Fan accounts deactivated. Anti-fans celebrated. Tabloids speculated about secret romances, scandals, even fabricated stories of hidden cameras in dorms. Jin threw his phone against the wall during rehearsal. Hobi nearly got into a fight with a stylist who made a joke about it. Namjoon spent the entire afternoon trying to keep the team from falling apart. But Jimin and Jungkook, they stood at center stage and didn't say a word. Not until the very end of rehearsal, when the music stopped and the lights dimmed and the crew started packing up. "I'm tired of being a secret," Jimin said suddenly, voice low but clear. "I'm tired of apologizing for feeling something," Jungkook nodded. "So let's stop." Namjoon walked up to them. "What are you thinking?" "We'll speak," Jimin replied. "On the live stream?" "No," Jungkook said. "On our terms." "What does that mean?" Jimin looked at the camera operator still packing gear. "It means we go live. Tonight. No filters, no scripts." Namjoon's face twisted. "You know what that could cost you." Jungkook looked over. "I know exactly what it could cost." And that night, at 9 p.m. sharp, without warning, a notification lit up the world. Jimin and Jungkook started a live video. No flashy set. No management-approved script. Just the two of them, sitting in their dorm living room, quiet at first. Hearts beating loud enough to be heard through the silence. Jungkook spoke first. "We didn't plan this," Jimin followed. "We just wanted to stop pretending." They took turns. They told stories. They talked about the years of secrecy, of anxiety, of deleting messages before managers could see, of sleeping in separate hotel rooms but sneaking through the hallways just to say goodnight, of writing songs that would never be released because the lyrics were too honest. Jungkook's voice cracked when he said, "I loved him since 2017. Jimin looked down when he whispered, "I loved him back since 2016. They didn't cry, but maybe everyone watching did. The comments flooded in, some hateful, some breathtakingly beautiful, some confused, some furious. But none of it mattered, because when the live stream ended, the truth was finally out. And even though the world felt like it might collapse, for the first time they could finally breathe. When they turned off the camera, the dorm was silent. Jimin looked at Jungkook. "You just burned the whole world down," he said. Jungkook smiled, that same cocky grin from their debut days. "Then we better make sure it was worth it." Outside, Seoul glittered like a city set on fire, and somewhere deep inside that blaze, two hands still held on. The live stream changed everything. Less than 24 hours after Jungkook and Jimin went live, the internet became a war zone. Korean news outlets flooded the front pages with scandal headlines. Tabloids around Asia published full-page spreads dissecting every word they said. Western media jumped in with sensationalized titles. K-pop's forbidden love. BTS duo breaks industry norms. And is this the end of the golden age of idols? The stock value of HYBE dropped 6% overnight. Fans turned into factions. On Weverse, some wrote letters of love and support. Others wrote threats. And by morning, Jimin's parents had called him 3 times. Jungkook's mother sent a message that only said, "I love you. Always." Inside the dorm, the atmosphere felt like a cold hotel lobby, sterile, uncomfortable, filled with people trying not to make eye contact. Jungkook was the first to break it. "So, are we going to talk about it?" he asked, arms crossed, standing in the middle of the living room. Yoongi glanced up from his coffee. "What's there to talk about? The grenade's already exploded." "We need to make a plan," Namjoon said, rubbing his temples. "That live stream, you two didn't just come out. You declared war." "It wasn't war," Jimin replied softly. "It was survival." "You don't understand what's coming," Sukjin said from the kitchen. "You think last night was the peak? That was just the beginning. We're going to lose partnerships, access, airplay, even safety. We already knew the risks," Jungkook replied. "We're not backing down now." Namjoon looked up, eyes sharp. "You think bravery is enough to shield you from what this industry will do to you? I've seen idols erased for less." Jimin looked at him then, something old and sad in his eyes. "Then let them erase us," he whispered. "But not before we show them we existed." Silence again. The kind that says more than any screaming ever could. Later that day, the company called an emergency meeting. No conference room this time. No polite greetings. Just Director Yoon, the CEO, 3 legal advisors, and 1 very quiet PR rep who looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You breached protocol," the CEO began coldly. "You went live without clearance. You revealed personal information. And you spoke on behalf of BTS without consulting leadership." "I spoke on behalf of myself," Jimin corrected. "So did Jungkook. The world doesn't see it that way. Then maybe the world needs to catch up," Yoon sighed. "There are people calling for your removal from the group. Let them call," Jungkook said. "It's not that simple. We've already had one of your Japanese brand deals pull out. A luxury sponsor from Paris issued a statement distancing themselves. Billboard Korea just retracted an award nomination. Then don't nominate us for things we didn't ask for." "That attitude," the CEO hissed, "will burn every bridge we've built for you." Jungkook leaned forward. "Then maybe those bridges weren't for us in the first place." The room fell into an icy hush. The CEO turned to Namjoon. "Do you condone this?" Namjoon didn't flinch. "I protect this group. That includes all 7, no matter who they love." One of the lawyers leaned in. "You're under contract until 2026. If we choose to pursue breach of image clause, you could be fined, suspended, or worse." Jimin nodded slowly. "Then do it." The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me? If that's the cost of telling the truth, then fine me, suspend me, kick me out. I won't go back to being your puppet. You'll destroy your careers." Jungkook stood. "No. We'll rebuild them with honesty this time." Outside the room, chaos was already erupting. Paparazzi had swarmed the big hit entrance. Bodyguards had to push back a screaming crowd. Protest signs, balloons, sobbing fans, angry fans, security threats, hashtags trending in real time. Protect Jungkook, OT5, BTS over party. We believe in them. They deserve love. Everything was out of control, except Jimin's heart. Because for the first time in years, he felt something like peace. But the peace didn't last. That night, a private letter was leaked to the media allegedly from a HYBE insider. It accused Jimin and Jungkook of inappropriate conduct, of unprofessionalism, and intimacy that endangered group cohesion. No one could prove who wrote it. But the damage was instant. Jimin's face was everywhere. Headlines labeled him manipulative, dramatic, toxic. Jungkook was called reckless, immature, dangerous. Even their own fans began questioning who initiated what. Back at the dorm, Jimin locked himself in his room. Jungkook tried knocking 3 times. No answer. So he picked the lock. Inside, Jimin was on the floor, back against the bed, phone shattered across the carpet. His hands were bleeding. Jungkook froze. "Hyung." Jimin didn't move. "I thought I could handle it," he whispered. "But I can't. I feel like I'm falling apart." Jungkook dropped to his knees, cupping Jimin's face. "Don't say that. They're twisting everything. They think I tricked you. They think I used you. They don't know me. I'm ruining your life. You're saving it." Jimin shook his head. "You don't get it. The world doesn't care about love stories. It wants perfection, obedience, illusions, and I'm too tired to be part of the illusion anymore." Jungkook pressed his forehead to Jimin's. "Then let's shatter it completely." And the next day, they did. They filmed a video, raw, unedited, sitting on the same rooftop where it all began. Jungkook spoke first. "They say love makes you weak, but this made me stronger. It made me honest." Jimin followed. "We didn't ask to be icons. We didn't ask to be symbols. We asked to be human. And if being human gets us exiled, then so be it." They uploaded it directly to YouTube. No monetization. No filters. Within 2 hours, it had 5 million views. In 24 hours, it hit 60 million. In 48 hours, the Korean government issued a statement defending artistic freedom. And then, something unexpected happened. A senior idol, one of the biggest legends of second-generation K-pop, posted a message of support. And another. And another. One by one, former idols, dancers, stylists, producers, staff began breaking their silence. Stories of forced relationships, closet romances, secret marriages, all hidden for the sake of the idol illusion. And Jimin and Jungkook became more than just a couple. They became a movement. The company couldn't contain it anymore. They tried to silence it, but it was already too big. The Seoul Dome concert sold out. 3 nights, 70,000 people per show. And when BTS stepped onto that stage the first time since the scandal, the cheers were deafening. No one knew what would happen. Would fans turn their backs? Would sponsors vanish? Would the press crucify them? But none of that mattered anymore, because when Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand on stage, in front of thousands, and Jimin took it, something shifted. Not just in K-pop, but in culture. And they didn't let go, because they weren't just idols anymore. They were symbols of what comes after the fall. Truth. And maybe, just maybe, freedom. The sun had barely risen when Jimin opened his eyes, his body still aching from the concert, and his mind even more so from the weight of everything that had followed. The morning light filtered through the half-closed blinds of the dorm window, dust swirling in the air like tiny ghosts that refused to leave. The silence was louder than any applause they'd ever received. Jungkook was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to Jimin, a towel around his neck, still in his stage pants from last night. His bare feet were resting on the cold wooden floor, his elbows on his knees, head down. "You didn't sleep," Jimin said softly. Jungkook didn't turn around. "I was thinking," he said, voice hoarse, "about the ending. The way the crowd screamed when we held hands, and then the way security rushed us off stage like we'd done something wrong." Jimin sat up slowly, brushing his fingers through his hair. "We did do something wrong. We were honest." Jungkook let out a bitter laugh and finally turned. His eyes were bloodshot, not from crying, but from pressure. Mental, emotional, physical pressure that never seemed to leave them. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "if all of this is a mistake?" Jimin didn't answer at first. He walked to the window, pulling the blinds fully open. Seoul was beginning to stir, but the chaos hadn't gone to sleep at all. Messages, threats, trending hashtags, speculations. They had barely closed their eyes before it all started again. "I wonder every minute," Jimin whispered. "And then I remember how it felt when I lied to myself for years. And I know this can't be worse than that." Jungkook walked over, stood beside him, close but not touching. He stared out at the city with the same expression he wore when he was 18, watching the world pass by from practice room windows, wondering if his voice was enough to make the world listen. "I thought they'd protect us more," he said. "They never promised they would," Jimin replied. "They promised success, not safety." A knock on the dorm door pulled them from their thoughts. It was Namjoon, face grim, phone in his hand. He didn't even step inside. "They leaked the dorm address," he said. Jungkook blinked. "What?" "Fans. Or antis. I don't even know anymore. There are people outside." Jimin closed his eyes. "How many?" "A lot." Outside, the crowd had already begun to form. Some held signs that said, "We love you no matter what." Others screamed for them to come out and explain themselves. But some held signs that bled red ink with the words, "Traitors, leers, selfish." Jungkook moved toward the door, but Namjoon stopped him with a hand on his chest. "No, you're not going out there. It's not safe. They think we're hiding. You're not. You're surviving." Seokjin joined them moments later, throwing his coat on, eyes dark. "They've crossed the line. Again. If the company won't act, I will." Hoseok followed, holding a trembling Taehyung by the wrist. Tae's face was pale, his hands shaking.
"They tried to follow him after practice, took pictures of his car, followed him for 3 blocks.
Jimin's stomach dropped. "This isn't just about us anymore," he said. "We're putting them in danger." Yoongi's voice came from behind, calm but sharp. "No, they're putting us all in danger. Don't twist it." They all gathered in the kitchen, too stunned to eat, too wired to rest. The air felt poisoned, heavy with the knowledge that this wasn't a phase. It wasn't going to pass. This was a reckoning. Namjoon sat at the head of the kitchen table, scrolling through statements. "There's talk that management wants to relocate you two separately. They say it's for protection, but I've seen this before. They're trying to separate us," Jungkook muttered. "Classic damage control." "Let them try," Jimin said. "I'll go nowhere without him." And then the message arrived. A simple text from Manager Do. "Meeting. HQ. 1 p.m. Mandatory. No stylists. No phones. Note." Jimin stared at the screen for a long moment before turning it off. They arrived at the headquarters with sunglasses on, heads down. No security escorted them. No PR team met them. No smiles. Just silence and tension so thick it followed them up every step. The conference room was darkened when they entered. 4 executives, 2 lawyers, 1 representative from the marketing division. All seated, all silent. Director Yoon stood at the end of the table, a remote in her hand. She clicked it. The screen behind her lit up with freeze frames from their live stream, photos from the rooftop, headlines from international media, charts showing fan engagement, dip-in streaming, drop-in stock. "This is what you've done," she said, no introduction. Jungkook stepped forward. "You mean what we've revealed?" Yoon raised a brow. "Do you understand what the word brand means?" "Do you?" Jimin replied. "Because ours was built on sincerity, on breaking norms, on healing people. And now you're asking us to betray that." A younger executive leaned in. "You signed an image clause. You're public figures, not your puppets," Jungkook said. "Do you want to be remembered for this?" Another added. "As the two who divided a generation? We'd rather be remembered for being real," Jimin said. "Then prepare for consequences." There was a moment of utter silence. Then Namjoon walked in, uninvited. "Unapologetis." "Then we all take the consequences," he said. "Because if you cut them, you cut all of us." Yoon's mouth fell open. "You're threatening collective breach?" "Not threatening," Yoongi said, stepping into the room next. "Promising." The others followed. Jin, Tae, Hobi. The entire group stood in formation behind Jimin and Jungkook, a wall of silent defiance. "We are BTS," Namjoon said. "All 7. Or none." The CEO leaned back slowly. "Do you understand what you're doing?" Jin stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Reminding you that you built an empire on our backs, and empires fall when they forget their foundation." The room didn't erupt. It fell still, and for the first time, it felt like the tables had turned. After the meeting, as they walked out of the building together, no one spoke until they were back in the van. The driver didn't even start the engine. He just looked at them through the mirror, wide-eyed. "What happens now?" Jungkook finally asked. Namjoon exhaled. "Now, we build something new." That night, they released a single, unannounced, unfiltered, titled "Truth is Not a Scandal." It wasn't marketed. No posters, no interviews. Just dropped onto every platform in the world, with a simple caption, "We are not ashamed." The lyrics were raw. No metaphors. No polished lines. Just verses that felt like open wounds. I held his hand because it steadied mine. Not for a camera. Not for a brand. But because in a world that loves silence, he was the first to hear me scream. The response was explosive. Banned from 2 broadcasting networks. Nominated for Song of the Year by 3 international awards. Fans held listening parties in Seoul, Tokyo, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Cairo. Jimin and Jungkook stood backstage before their next show, the screams of the crowd shaking the walls. Jungkook turned to him, eyes searching. "Are you ready?" Jimin smiled, tired but unbroken. "I was always ready. I was just scared." Jungkook took his hand. "Then let's walk into the fire." And together, they stepped into the light. The silence wasn't peace. It was pressure ticking, seething, building under the surface like tectonic plates before an earthquake. 3 days had passed since the release of "Truth is Not a Scandal," and not a single company representative had reached out. No formal statements. No damage control. Nothing. Jungkook lay awake at 3:12 a.m., staring at the ceiling. The walls of the dorm had never felt closer, tighter. He could still hear the way the audience had roared the night before, when he and Jimin performed the new single. That scream wasn't for choreography. It was for truth, for rebellion, for pain. Across the hall, Jimin's room remained dark. He hadn't said much after the show, just a whisper of good night and a soft, hollow smile. It was the kind of expression that meant everything was not okay, but he no longer had the energy to pretend otherwise. Jungkook climbed out of bed and padded through the hallway barefoot, his chest aching with something more than exhaustion. He knocked twice, waited, nothing. Then he pushed the door open. Jimin was curled on the floor, surrounded by ripped papers, lyrics, scribbled notes, maybe diary entries. His hands trembled. His eyes were red. "I couldn't sleep," Jimin muttered. "You haven't eaten." "I don't want to." Jungkook crouched down beside him. You're not okay. No one's okay. We lit a fire and forgot to build walls to keep out the smoke. Jungkook reached for his hand. Jimin pulled away at first, but then surrendered. His fingers were ice cold. We did the right thing, Jungkook whispered. Jimin laughed bitterly. Then why does it feel like I'm disappearing? The next morning brought a storm the industry hadn't prepared for. Dispatch released a 30-page expose, anonymous interviews, former managers, internal documents, all implying that BTS had been internally fractured for years and that the Jungkook incident was only the symptom, not the cause. The article painted a damning picture. Creative conflicts, jealousy, favoritism, even hints at falsified songwriting credits and quiet payoffs. They dragged the entire group through mud, suggesting that the unity they'd always championed had been nothing but an illusion. Jungkook's phone exploded. His mother called crying. Taehyung's sister texted him with a single message. What the hell is going on? Fans were confused, enraged, divided again. Jin paced the living room, throwing newspapers into the trash one by one. Why now? He barked. Why this level of venom? Namjoon replied without looking up from his laptop. Because we said no, and they need to punish us for it. Yoongi sat on the edge of the couch, jaw clenched, reading the translated international versions of the article. This was coordinated. That level of detail, it was planned weeks ago. They're trying to erase us, Jimin said quietly from the hallway. His voice didn't tremble anymore. It was past trembling. It was sinking. No, Jungkook snapped. They're trying to control us. There's a difference. Namjoon turned his laptop so the others could see. Look at this, he said. Private investor boards are discussing whether to force HYBE to suspend group activities until further notice. They want to freeze us, Hoseok said. Put us on ice until we break. Jin sat down, head in his hands. And what the hell do we do now? Just sit here and let them gut us alive? No, Jimin said. We film. The room turned to him. Film what? Namjoon asked. Everything. Jimin stood straighter now. The truth. The process. Us. We show the world what it's like to be idols caught between fame and identity. Let them see what it's done to us. Let them see the blood under the glitter. Jungkook looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time. You want to make a documentary? No, Jimin replied. I want to make a confession. Unfiltered. No lights, no scripts, no edits. Yoongi stared at him. They'll try to shut it down before it gets off the ground. Let them try, Jimin whispered. Let them see who we are when we're not wearing the mask. Over the next week, they gathered footage. Quiet moments. Explosive arguments. Teary confessions. Raw studio sessions. Scenes of the group sitting in silence around the kitchen table. Jungkook filming Jimin crying in the bathroom after another wave of hate messages. Jimin capturing Jungkook punching a mirror after watching a news report calling him a danger to the K-pop image. They filmed themselves sleeping, waking up, not knowing what day it was. Taehyung filmed a monologue on the rooftop about loneliness. Hoseok recorded himself dancing in an empty studio until his knees gave out. Yoongi sat in the dark with a bottle of whiskey and recorded himself whispering lyrics he was too afraid to write down. Jin cooked dinner one night and spoke to the camera for 40 minutes about how the group had saved him from himself and how fame was the price he never wanted to pay. Namjoon narrated the entire timeline from debut to present with eerie calm, like a historian recounting the fall of a kingdom. And at the center of it all, Jimin and Jungkook, kissing off camera, holding each other on hotel beds, sitting side by side in silence, reading hate messages aloud, breaking down, putting themselves back together. No music, no production team, just a truth the industry had tried to bury. They titled the film, Not Yours, and then they leaked it, uploaded anonymously to Vimeo and torrent sites with no watermark. It spread like wildfire, downloaded over 20 million times in 48 hours. Fans began translating it into every major language. Subtitles in Arabic, Portuguese, Tagalog, Hindi, and even Russian appeared within days. Media outlets scrambled to identify the source. HYBE denied involvement. Other idols quietly began resharing cryptic quotes from the film. Poets and filmmakers tweeted praise. Activists hailed it as a mirror to manufactured perfection. And then the first lawsuit landed. HYBE filed an official internal review against BTS for unauthorized media release, breach of internal policy, and defamation of corporate interest. That same night, Jimin's father called him for the first time in months. He didn't yell. He didn't ask what the hell his son had done. He just said, "I watched it. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you ever had to hide." That broke Jimin more than anything. He cried on the floor of the dorm kitchen for an hour. Jungkook's arms wrapped around him, whispering over and over, "You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone." But nothing could stop what was coming. The company called a final meeting. All 7 attended. The boardroom was darker than usual. The energy was different. No more performance. Just war. "We are prepared to terminate your contract," the CEO said. "Effective immediately. This is your last chance to retract, apologize, and fall in line." Namjoon didn't look at him. He looked at the others. He looked at Jimin, and he said, "We won't apologize for surviving." The CEO leaned forward. "Then your careers end here." "No," Jimin said. "Your illusion ends here." And then he stood. So did Jungkook. So did all 7. They walked out together. No security. No press team. No stylists. Just a silence. Louder than any scream they'd ever heard. And in that silence, for the first time in years, they were free. They didn't know where to go. They didn't even know if they were still a group. Not officially, not legally. As they walked out of the building, the same building that once welcomed them with open arms and neon-lit dreams, the air felt thin. Even the wind seemed to avoid them. Jungkook's grip on Jimin's wrist tightened as paparazzi lights flashed like lightning across their faces. The others moved in closer, shielding each other, saying nothing. Cameras shouted questions. "Are you disbanding? Is this the end of BTS? Are you going solo? Is it true you leaked the film? Do you regret coming out?" Jimin raised his chin and said nothing. They walked straight past the crowd like ghosts. Back at the dorm, no one spoke. It was late, past midnight. Namjoon stood by the window, his arms folded, watching the street below, like a soldier waiting for another attack. Taehyung paced the hallway, muttering lyrics to himself. Hosik sat on the floor, back against the wall, head down, earbuds in but no music playing. Jin stared at his reflection in the microwave, blinking but not seeing. Yoongi poured himself a drink without looking at the bottle. And Jimin? He stood in the bathroom, staring at his own eyes in the mirror. "Who the hell are you now?" he whispered to himself. He didn't notice Jungkook behind him until he felt the warmth at his back. Jungkook didn't say anything. He just stood there, resting his chin lightly on Jimin's shoulder. "They're going to drag us through fire for this," Jimin said. "Let them. We'll walk through it." Jimin turned to face him. "What if it never ends?" Jungkook touched his cheek. "Then we'll never stop walking." The next day, news broke. The headline was simple but violent. BTS no longer under contract. Effective immediately. It trended within 10 minutes. The internet imploded. The term "free agents" circulated like blood in the water. Record labels began circling. Global labels. American studios. Solo project offers. Modeling contracts. Collaboration proposals. The industry buzzed like vultures picking at a living body. But the group didn't respond. They sat in their dorm, together, in pajamas, eating ramen in silence. Then, Namjoon broke the silence with the only words that mattered. "What do we do now?" The answer wasn't clear. Taehyung said he wanted to disappear for a while, maybe paint in Paris. Yoongi said he needed a break from people. Maybe rent a cabin and just write. Jin confessed that he'd been offered a TV role months ago but turned it down out of loyalty. Hobie said he wasn't ready to stop dancing, but he couldn't do it under someone else's leash again. And Jungkook? "I don't want to run," he said. "I want to build." Jimin looked up at him. "Build what?" "Our own house." The room went still. He stood. "I mean it. No more companies. No more execs. No more silence. We start from zero. We start with truth. We build something no one can take from us." They stared at him like he was insane. He didn't back down. That night, they rented a co-working space under a fake name. The next day, they formed a private LLC under Taehyung's cousin's address. Within 72 hours, they hired an independent legal advisor, a freelance brand consultant, and a digital strategist from the gaming industry, someone completely outside the K-pop world. They called the project 7 Unfiltered. No logo. No press release. Just a promise. They launched a private site with a timer. No one knew what it was. Fans speculated it was a solo drop, a goodbye letter, even an NFT scam. But when the countdown hit 0, the website flooded with over 3 million viewers in the first 5 minutes. A single video played. Jimin, sitting in a dim room, eyes swollen, but honest. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to give you the pieces of us that they told us to hide. Then it cut to Jungkook, barefoot, shirtless, in his home studio. They made us stars, but stars don't get to bleed, so we're bleeding now, loudly. The site went down from traffic overload. ARMY lost their minds. New hashtags emerged, not from PR teams, but from fans themselves. 7is Reborn, Let Them Be, Unfiltered BTS. But for every message of support, a storm followed. Industry insiders began leaking emails accusing the group of staging their own downfall for publicity. A popular idol from another company posted a cryptic message on Bubble: respect the system or face the consequences. Death threats escalated. Jimin's old elementary school photos were defaced and leaked on online hate forums. Jungkook's private messages with a cousin were stolen and edited out of context. It was no longer a scandal. It was a purge. The silence they'd tried to escape had become a howl of public frenzy. Jin cracked first. He threw a chair across the dorm kitchen and shouted until his voice broke.
They want us dead. Do you get that? They want us erased. And we're just sitting here trying to make art?
Yoongi grabbed him by the collar. Then what? We let them win? Let them silence us? Silence us? Jin laughed. They're already turning us into villains. No matter what we say, we're liars or manipulators or traitors to the industry. Namjoon stepped in. Then we stop playing by their rules. Then we lose everything. Then we lose everything. The echo was unbearable. The next morning, a van waited outside. Jimin opened the door and saw an envelope sitting on the passenger seat. No signature, no logo, just one line, handwritten on the front. You're being watched. Inside were printed photos, grainy, stalked. Him and Jungkook from weeks ago kissing in a parking garage, touching faces in a dance studio, holding each other in the dorm stairwell. He didn't show them to the others. He just walked to Jungkook's room, handed him the envelope, and said nothing. Jungkook looked through the images in silence. Then he tore them up. Jimin's voice cracked. What if they hurt you? What if they ruin you? They can't ruin what I already gave away, Jungkook whispered. I already gave you all of me. They can't take what's not theirs. That night, Jimin stood on a live stream again. Alone, he looked into the camera for a long time before speaking. You want a villain? He said. Fine, make me one. If loving someone means betrayal, then I'll wear that title. But I won't be quiet. I won't disappear. We are still here, and we're not done. And the world burned again. But this time, it wasn't just fans watching. It was idols, trainees, backup dancers, stagehands, former staff. People began to speak, whisper first, then louder. Anonymous forums filled with untold stories, false relationships, covered scandals, mental breakdowns hidden behind comeback photos. And slowly, without even realizing it, BTS wasn't fighting alone anymore. They'd started something else, not just a comeback, a cleansing. And this time, they wouldn't bow when the curtain closed. They'd burn it down instead. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. It poured like the sky was mourning something. Seoul streets pulsed under the storm, neon lights smeared across puddles, umbrellas clashing like shields in a battlefield where no one looked each other in the eye anymore. For BTS, the city no longer felt like home. Not after the warning in the van, not after the photos, not after the silence that followed. No company statements, no legal responses, no public condemnations or defenses. Just a growing, creeping quiet that screamed of plotting. Inside the safe house, they'd relocated to an apartment rented through a friend of Taehyung's cousin under a fake name. They moved like ghosts. No loud music. No laughter. No stylists. No mirrors. Just heavy breathing, whispered arguments, and a cold that refused to leave, even with the heat on. Jungkook paced the floor at 3 a.m., barefoot and fuming. Jimin sat by the window in an oversized hoodie, knees pulled to his chest. The others were scattered through the apartment in various states of dysfunction. Taehyung curled up on the balcony couch, Jin asleep at the dining table, Hoseok drawing sharp, erratic lines in a sketchbook. Namjoon hadn't slept in 2 days. Yoongi hadn't spoken more than 3 words since morning. "They're trying to exhaust us," Jungkook muttered, his voice sharp. "It's a psychological tactic. Silence, then pressure. Make us feel paranoid. Make us turn on each other. They don't have to try," Yoongi said from across the room, eyes bloodshot. "We're already cracking." "We're not," Jimin whispered. "We're still here, barely." Namjoon looked up from the laptop screen, dark circles under his eyes. "They've pulled every version of Not Yours from every major platform. Copyright claims, legal takedowns. VPN users are still passing it around, but it's a war of attrition now. They're trying to erase the truth one link at a time. Then we leak it again," Jungkook snapped. "And they'll bury it again." Jimin finally turned from the window. "What if that's the point?" Everyone looked at him. "What if we've already done the damage? What if the only reason they're still coming after us is because we made them bleed?" Yoongi gave a dry chuckle. "You think they bleed?" Jimin stood. His voice didn't shake anymore. "I think they bleed when we refuse to be silenced. I think they bleed when they lose control. And we've taken something from them they can't buy back. Narrative." Namjoon nodded slowly. "So they're going to hit back with what they have left, which is people." The words were barely out of his mouth when the betrayal dropped. Dispatch released another headline at dawn. But this time, it wasn't about Jimin and Jungkook. It was about Tae. Photos, videos, leaked voicemails, a supposed secret relationship with an actress, taken out of context, shot months ago, deliberately framed to imply he'd lied about being single. The narrative was immediate. He'd pretended to support Jungkook while hiding his own scandal. A coward. A hypocrite. But what tore through the fandom even more was the audio. A private voicemail he'd left for an ex, never intended for public ears. In it, he'd said, "I love the boys, but sometimes it feels like we're dying together in slow motion." The backlash was brutal. Fans turned on him, accused him of betraying the group. Hashtags trended. Tae out, fake friend. Jungkook deserved better. Inside the safe house, Tae didn't speak. He locked himself in the bathroom and refused to come out for 6 hours. Not even for food. Not even when Jungkook pounded on the door and Jimin begged through the frame. It was Yoongi who finally got him out. He didn't use sympathy. He didn't offer comfort. He just whispered, "If you don't get up, they win. And you know damn well none of us are built to lose." When Tae stepped out, his eyes were swollen. He didn't look at anyone. He went straight to the balcony, lit a cigarette, and whispered into the rain. "They're using our love against us." One by one, Hoseok punched a hole in the wall that night. Namjoon threw his laptop across the room. Jin sat on the floor with a bottle of soju and cried silently, like someone trying not to wake the ghosts in the room. And Jungkook, he stood in the center of the chaos, breathing hard, blood boiling. "We don't retaliate," he said suddenly. "Not like them. Not with lies. Not with setups. We fight with presence, with honesty, with noise so loud they can't drown it." Jimin looked up. "Noise? We go live. No scripts, no PR, no filters. Us." Namjoon laughed bitterly. "You mean us? While they're still trying to finish off Tae's reputation? You think we have any credibility left?" "Exactly," Jungkook said. "We have nothing left to lose." So they did. 3 hours later, the stream began. All 7 of them. No makeup, no stylists, just an old webcam, fluorescent lighting, and truth. Namjoon spoke first. "We were told that love is fine as long as it stays invisible, that we could be real as long as it was off camera. That fame came with a price, and if we wanted to stay alive in this industry, we'd pay in silence." Jin followed. "They taught us how to smile, even when we were falling apart, how to hide relationships, how to rehearse grief." Yoongi looked into the lens like it owed him something. "We were products, we became myths, but we're people, and people break." Then Tae. His voice cracked. "Yes, that voicemail was mine. I said what I said, and I don't take it back. Because loving my members doesn't mean I don't feel tired. It doesn't mean I don't feel scared. We're human. You've just never been allowed to see it." Jungkook spoke. "They told us we owed you perfection, that any flaw would be betrayal. But I think the betrayal is what they did to our silence. Jimin looked directly into the lens, unblinking. And if you're still here after everything, if you're still listening, then maybe you never needed the illusion. Maybe you were just waiting for us to be real. The live stream crashed 4 servers. It was mirrored to 10 platforms in 5 languages. It made headlines not for controversy, but for grief, for humanity, for courage. But not everyone was moved. 2 major K-pop agencies issued statements hours later, condemning BTS's actions as dangerous, disruptive, and damaging to the industry standard. And then the real shock came. An anonymous whistleblower leaked documents from inside HYBE itself, exposing contracts, financial control clauses, dating restrictions, surveillance records, and most damning of all, a multi-year plan to market select members of BTS for public relationships to maximize commercial appeal. Everything Jimin and Jungkook had feared was true. They'd never been paranoid, just controlled. When the news broke, fans didn't turn away. They turned inward. They got louder. They demanded accountability. They started campaigns. They raised funds for an independent artists union. And suddenly, BTS was no longer alone. Idols from smaller agencies began sharing subtle messages on social media lines from the leaked BTS film. Hashtags, Morse code, emoji chains. Clues that they too had been forced into roles they never chose. The system was shaking, and in the eye of the storm, Jimin sat with Jungkook on the rooftop, the sky clearing just enough to see the stars again. "They're going to come for us harder now," he said. "I know. They'll use people we love. I know. They might even try to rewrite us." Jungkook turned, brushing a strand of hair from Jimin's face. "Then we write louder." And under the quiet sky, above the noise of the world, they kissed. Not hidden, not backstage, not behind studio walls, but here, now visible, unapologetis, unfiltered, alive. The air inside the studio was thick with tension, not just anxiety, but something older, something deeper, the feeling of waiting to be punished for breathing. It had been 12 days since the live stream, the one that changed the tide. 12 days since the whistleblower leak turned K-pop from spectacle to courtroom. 12 days since Jimin and Jungkook held hands not behind the stage, not in a hotel hallway, not in the shadows, but in full view of the world. And for the first time since the unraveling began, something strange was happening. The silence stopped. The industry didn't go dark. It turned on itself. Major tabloids began backpedaling. Anonymous sources retracted. Some managers resigned. Executives gave carefully worded apologies that reeked of preservation, not remorse. A few idols began following BTS publicly again. And under hashtags like "I stand with them" and "No more puppets," thousands of young trainees and dancers found a voice they'd never dared use before. But not everyone celebrated, because power does not surrender quietly. Not in this business, and especially not when it's been publicly humiliated. On the 13th day, a package arrived at the safe house. Plain black wrapping, no return address. Inside was a hard drive, unmarked. Attached was a single note, handwritten in block letters. "If you keep pushing, this goes public. Consider this a final warning." Jimin stood in the kitchen, staring at the drive in his hands like it was a live bomb. Jungkook took it from him, holding it between his fingers like he might snap it in two. Namjoon read the note, then passed it to Jin, who immediately dropped it on the table and stepped away like it was on fire. "Who said it?" Jin asked. "Does it matter?" Yoongi said. "The message is the same. Sit down, shut up, or be destroyed." Taehyung leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "What do you think is on it?" Jimin's voice came out hollow. "Everything." "What do you mean, everything?" Hobie asked, more sharply than he intended. "I mean, things we said, things we did, things that were never supposed to leave, the green rooms, the dorm, our phones, maybe even things that were taken without us knowing." Jimin's voice trembled slightly. "I think they've been recording us for years." Jungkook clenched his jaw. "You think or you know?" Jimin turned away. Jungkook grabbed his arm more urgently now. "Do you know?" "I suspected." Jimin's voice cracked. "After the Second World Tour, things leaked that no one could have known unless they were there. Unless they were listening, I brought it up to a manager once, and he just smiled and said, "Better safe than sorry." Yoongi stood up. "They've been building a vault, insurance, in case we ever stop playing the game." Namjoon looked at the hard drive like it was a weapon. "Then we leak it first." "No," Jimin said immediately. "If we release it, we burn the people we love. Not just us, each other. Every secret, every mistake, there's no cleaning that up." "Then what?" Jungkook asked. "Let them control us again?" "No," Jimin replied, steadier now. "We do what we've been doing. We stay louder than their threats. What if they release it anyway? Then we let the truth land where it lands." Yoongi lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. "This is war. And war means casualties." Jin sat down heavily. "So what? We wait to be humiliated? We remind people what we stand for before they try to rewrite us." Jungkook stepped forward, fists clenched. "Let them drop it. Let them release whatever they think will shame us. Let them show us screaming, breaking, fighting. Let them see us human, because the only thing we've ever been afraid of was being real." Jimin turned to him. "And you're not afraid anymore?" "Terrified," Jungkook said. "But I'm still standing." Namjoon slammed his hand on the table. "Then we fight with presence, with volume, not in their language, in ours." That same day, they scheduled a concert, unofficial, unsanctioned, ungoverned. No sponsors, no label. Just 7 artists, 7 friends, 7 survivors. They announced it on the Seven unfiltered site, with nothing but a title, "The Ones Who Chose to Stay." Tickets sold out in 5 minutes. The venue, a converted warehouse near the Han River, could hold 10,000. They could have filled a stadium, but they wanted intimacy, closeness, no barrier, no pyrotechnics, no backup dancers, just stories and sound. The night of the concert arrived like a storm. The crowd was unlike any they'd seen before, diverse, unfiltered, crying and dancing at once. There were no glow sticks, no official merch, just handmade banners, hand-drawn tattoos, faces smeared with emotion and eyeliner. They came on stage in silence. Jin stepped forward first. "This isn't a concert. This is a confession." Yoongi followed. "This is for the parts of us they told us to erase." Namjoon took the mic. "This is for the kids with notebooks full of lyrics and no place to scream." Hoseok danced first. It wasn't choreographed. He moved like he was trying to tear open the air, like his body was an apology for everything he never said. When he collapsed at the end of the song, the audience screamed his name like a prayer. Taehyung sung next, an unreleased ballad, written alone, lyrics trembling with guilt and forgiveness. When he hit the final note, he turned away so no one could see him cry, but everyone saw. Yoongi rapped third. It was fury. It was fire. Every word landed like a punch. Lines about contracts written in blood, about smiling while bleeding, about cameras that only wanted the pretty parts. When he threw the mic at the floor, the crowd exploded. Then Jungkook. No track, just his voice. He sang a stripped-down version of Euphoria, slower, raw, cracked. And for the first time, he looked at Jimin as he sang it. Jimin walked on stage before the final chorus ended. They met in the middle. He whispered something. Jungkook nodded. And then they kissed. Not for the cameras, not for rebellion, just because they were in love. Just because they could. And the world kept turning. After the show, they didn't leave through the back. They walked out the front. Past security, past reporters, past fans, hand in hand. And when the first question flew, "Do you think your careers can survive this?" Jimin turned, smiling, eyes bright but tired. "We're not here to survive," he said. "We're here to live." And they kept walking, because the fire was still burning. But now they'd built a home inside it. The fire was no longer metaphor. It was real. At 3:42 a.m., the safe house went dark. Lights out, all of them. The building's security systems cut in perfect synchronicity. Jungkook noticed it first. He always did. His body had learned to read silence like a second language. The kind of silence that meant intrusion. He stood up without speaking. The others were scattered across the apartment, half asleep, some mid-conversation. Jimin curled on the couch with a blanket tucked under his chin. Yoongi in the kitchen making tea. Namjoon muttering edits to a lyric sheet. Jin scrolling through the news. Hoseok asleep. Taehyung humming into his phone mic. The moment the power went out, the sound of the rain came sharper, louder, a knife dragging across glass. Jungkook reached for his phone. Dead. Jimin's eyes opened. What's wrong? I don't know yet, Jungkook whispered. And then the first rock shattered the front window. Glass exploded. Taehyung screamed. Hoseok shot up. Jin yelled something, but it was lost in the thundering second crash. Jungkook pulled Jimin to the floor. Outside, voices shouting, jeering, chaotic. Someone pounded on the door. Then another rock. Namjoon's voice was firm. Basement. Now. Jin grabbed a flashlight. Yoongi grabbed a chair leg. Taehyung grabbed Hoseok's arm, eyes wide, blood trickling down his temple from a glass shard. Jimin's breathing was ragged. Jungkook wrapped both arms around him. They moved in silence. The basement was cold and unfinished, just cement, a flickering backup light, and shadows that stretched too far. They huddled in the corner like children hiding from a nightmare they'd already survived too many times. Jungkook pressed his forehead to Jimin's. You're okay. You're okay. Jimin wasn't blinking, just shaking. Yoongi's voice cracked. Did they follow us? Fans? Press? No, Namjoon said. Not fans, not press. Then who? People who want this to stop. People who want to send a message. They could have set fire to the house. They didn't. Yet. It took the police 20 minutes to arrive. 20 minutes of rocks. Screaming. Silence. Breathing. When they emerged, the front of the house was unrecognizable. Windows shattered. Door broken in. Paint splattered across the walls. Liars. Shame. You rewind everything. One officer took notes like it was just another noise complaint. Another asked, Are you sure you didn't provoke this? Jungkook stepped forward, fists clenched. We existed. That was the provocation. They moved to a hotel that night. No press, no announcement. Just 7 names changed on a hotel registry. 7 broken sleep cycles. 7 minds unraveling at different speeds. In the morning, the footage hit social media. Not from the security cameras. Those had been cut. But someone had filmed the attack. Intentionally. The angles were perfect. Faces covered. But their intention clear as day. It was a message to all watching. Speak like them. And this could be you. The media downplayed it. An incident. A reactionary misunderstanding. But the footage went viral anyway. 10 million views in an hour. People began to ask what had never been asked before. Is this the cost of honesty? What have we allowed the industry to become? How far would we go to protect a lie? Jimin didn't leave the hotel room for 2 days. He didn't eat much. He didn't speak unless spoken to. The others gave him space. Except Jungkook. Jungkook never left. He sat at the edge of the bed, holding his hand, singing under his breath when Jimin shook. Humming old songs they wrote in bathrooms and stairwells before the world knew their names. On the 3rd night, Jimin whispered, Do you regret it? Jungkook looked up, startled. What? This. Us. Coming out. Fighting back. No. But the house is just a house? The music deals are just deals. My reputation isn't real if it's a lie. Jimin closed his eyes. I'm scared, Kook. I know. What if they try again? What if next time it's worse? Jungkook didn't answer right away. He stood up, walked to the window, stared at the gray city skyline. Then he said, Then we burn everything they built until we can't be hurt by it anymore. That morning, they got a call. From someone they didn't expect. Bang Si-hyuk, Big Hit's founder. He didn't call to threaten them. He called to talk. Namjoon took the call first, putting it on speaker. Why now? Namjoon asked. Silence. Then Si-hyuk said, Because I never wanted it to get this far. Yoongi scoffed. You built this machine? I built a dream. The machine came after. Jungkook stepped closer. So, what do you want? I want to help you survive it. You're not our ally, Jin said flatly. I don't want credit. I want to give you the files. Everyone froze. What files? Namjoon asked. The ones they used to threaten you. The vault. The archive. You have them? I kept everything. For protection. But I'm giving it to you now. Why? Because I saw the video. The kiss. The crowd. And I remembered why I started this in the first place. They didn't trust him. Not fully. But a few hours later, a USB arrived by courier. No name, no message. Inside, thousands of files, audio, surveillance, emails, message, camera footage, proof of everything. The cover-ups, the manipulation, the forced silence, even plans for manufactured scandals if any of the members tried to leave. Jimin opened a folder marked with his name. He clicked on one audio file, a manager's voice, his voice. Jimin's too volatile. If he ever talks, we bury him. Start a rumor. Find a photo. Turn fans against him. Make Jungkook seem like the victim. His hands shook so hard, he dropped the USB. Jungkook picked it up. He looked at Jimin, eyes full of rage and something deeper grief. We leak it, Yoongi said. It could burn everything, everyone. Namjoon nodded. But it could also set everyone else free. That night, they did it. No password, no paywall. They uploaded everything. They didn't release a statement, didn't give interviews, didn't ask for understanding. They just opened the vault and walked away from it, and then waited. The internet imploded. Not just fans, journalists, laviers, politicians, other idols, agencies. Scandals erupted across the entire industry. An idol from another company confirmed they'd been forced into a fake relationship. Another admitted to being blackmailed into silence after their sexual orientation was exposed. Trains began speaking out. Some cried, some shouted, some simply said, I thought I was the only one. And through it all, BTS remained silent. For a while, until the 7th day. They walked onto a stage again. A small one, no cameras, just a room full of people who refused to look away. Namjoon stood first. This isn't a performance. Jimin followed. This is an aftermath. Jungkook stood last. This is what remains when truth survives the fire. And together, for the first time in a long time, they sang not to protect a brand, or perform an image, or win an award. They sang because they were still alive, because they chose each other, and because somewhere between the ashes and the silence, they found something no machine could ever manufacture. Freedom. The city felt quieter now, but not in peace. It was the kind of quiet that existed after a disaster. The eerie hush when everything had burned, and people were still trying to decide whether to rebuild or abandon the ruins. Seoul's streets had a strange emptiness to them, even though they were still full of traffic, movement, breath. It was a psychological emptiness, a collective breath held. The vault had detonated across every corner of the entertainment industry. No one came out unscathed. Not labels, not networks, not journalists, not even idols who had once played into the machine willingly. Names dropped, faces exposed, contracts reprinted in full with redacted names that didn't stay redacted for long. Fans, for the first time, looked at their idols not as products, but as survivors. Some couldn't handle that. Others began to ask questions they were never supposed to ask. But BTS didn't speak. Not immediately. After leaking the vault, they had chosen silence not because they were defeated, but because sometimes truth needed time to settle before voices returned. But Jimin couldn't sleep. It was fury. It was fire. Every word landed like a punch. Lines about contracts written in blood, about smiling while bleeding, about cameras that only wanted the pretty parts. When he threw the mic at the floor, the crowd exploded. Then Jungkook. No track, just his voice. He sang a stripped-down version of Euphoria, slower, raw, cracked. And for the first time, he looked at Jimin as he sang it. Jimin walked on stage before the final chorus ended. They met in the middle. He whispered something. Jungkook nodded. And then they kissed. Not for the cameras, not for rebellion, just because they were in love. Just because they could. And the world kept turning. After the show, they didn't leave through the back. They walked out the front, past security, past reporters, past fans, hand in hand. And when the first question flew, do you think your careers can survive this? Jimin turned, smiling, eyes bright but tired. We're not here to survive, he said. We're here to live. And they kept walking, because the fire was still burning. But now they'd built a home inside it. The fire was no longer metaphor. It was real. At 3:42 a.m., the safe house went dark. Lights out, all of them. The building's security systems cut in perfect synchronicity. Jungkook noticed it first. He always did. His body had learned to read silence like a second language. The kind of silence that meant intrusion. He stood up without speaking. The others were scattered across the apartment, half asleep, some mid-conversation. Jimin curled on the couch with a blanket tucked under his chin. Yoongi in the kitchen making tea. Namjoon muttering edits to a lyric sheet. Jin scrolling through the news. Hoseok asleep. Taehyung humming into his phone mic. The moment the power went out, the sound of the rain came sharper, louder, a knife dragging across glass. Jungkook reached for his phone. Dead. Jimin's eyes opened. "What's wrong?" "I don't know yet," Jungkook whispered. And then the first rock shattered the front window. Glass exploded. Taehyung screamed. Hoseok shot up. Jin yelled something, but it was lost in the thundering second crash. Jungkook pulled Jimin to the floor. Outside, voices shouting, jeering, chaotic. Someone pounded on the door, then another rock. Namjoon's voice was firm. "Basement. Now." Jin grabbed a flashlight. Yoongi grabbed a chair leg. Taehyung grabbed Hoseok's arm, eyes wide, blood trickling down his temple from a glass shard. Jimin's breathing was ragged. Jungkook wrapped both arms around him. They moved in silence. The basement was cold and unfinished, just cement, a flickering backup light, and shadows that stretched too far. They huddled in the corner like children hiding from a nightmare they'd already survived too many times. Jungkook pressed his forehead to Jimin's. "You're okay. You're okay." Jimin wasn't blinking, just shaking. Yoongi's voice cracked. "Did they follow us? Fans? Press?" "No," Namjoon said. "Not fans, not press. Then who? People who want this to stop. People who want to send a message. They could have set fire to the house. They didn't. Yet. It took the police 20 minutes to arrive. 20 minutes of rocks. Screaming. Silence. Breathing. When they emerged, the front of the house was unrecognizable. Windows shattered. Door broken in. Paint splattered across the walls. Liars. Shame. You rewind everything. One officer took notes like it was just another noise complaint. Another asked, "Are you sure you didn't provoke this?" Jungkook stepped forward, fists clenched. "We existed. That was the provocation." They moved to a hotel that night. No press, no announcement. Just 7 names changed on a hotel registry. 7 broken sleep cycles. 7 minds unraveling at different speeds. In the morning, the footage hit social media. Not from the security cameras. Those had been cut. But someone had filmed the attack. Intentionally. The angles were perfect. Faces covered. But their intention clear as day. It was a message to all watching. Speak like them. And this could be you. The media downplayed it. An incident. A reactionary misunderstanding. But the footage went viral anyway. 10 million views in an hour. People began to ask what had never been asked before. Is this the cost of honesty? What have we allowed the industry to become? How far would we go to protect a lie? Jimin didn't leave the hotel room for 2 days. He didn't eat much. He didn't speak unless spoken to. The others gave him space. Except Jungkook. Jungkook never left. He sat at the edge of the bed, holding his hand, singing under his breath when Jimin shook. Humming old songs they wrote in bathrooms and stairwells before the world knew their names. On the 3rd night, Jimin whispered, "Do you regret it?" Jungkook looked up, startled. "What?" "This. Us. Coming out. Fighting back." "No. But the house is just a house. The music deals are just deals. My reputation isn't real if it's a lie." Jimin closed his eyes. "I'm scared, Kook. I know. What if they try again? What if next time it's worse?" Jungkook didn't answer right away. He stood up, walked to the window, stared at the gray city skyline. Then he said, "Then we burn everything they built until we can't be hurt by it anymore." That morning, they got a call. From someone they didn't expect. Bang Si-hyuk, Big Hit's founder. He didn't call to threaten them. He called to talk. Namjoon took the call first, putting it on speaker. "Why now?" Namjoon asked. Silence. Then Si-hyuk said, "Because I never wanted it to get this far." Yoongi scoffed. "You built this machine?" "I built a dream. The machine came after. Jungkook stepped closer. So, what do you want? I want to help you survive it. You're not our ally, Jin said flatly. I don't want credit. I want to give you the files. Everyone froze. What files? Namjoon asked. The ones they used to threaten you. The vault. The archive. You have them? I kept everything. For protection. But I'm giving it to you now. Why? Because I saw the video. The kiss. The crowd. And I remembered why I started this in the first place. They didn't trust him. Not fully. But a few hours later, a USB arrived by courier. No name. No message. Inside, thousands of files. Audio, surveillance, emails, message, camera footage, proof of everything. The cover-ups, the manipulation, the forced silence, even plans for manufactured scandals if any of the members tried to leave. Jimin opened a folder marked with his name. He clicked on one audio file, a manager's voice, his voice. Jimin's too volatile. If he ever talks, we bury him. Start a rumor. Find a photo. Turn fans against him. Make Jungkook seem like the victim. His hands shook so hard, he dropped the USB. Jungkook picked it up. He looked at Jimin, eyes full of rage and something deeper grief. We leak it, Yoongi said. It could burn everything, everyone. Namjoon nodded. But it could also set everyone else free. That night, they did it. No password, no paywall. They uploaded everything. They didn't release a statement, didn't give interviews, didn't ask for understanding. They just opened the vault and walked away from it, and then waited. The internet imploded. Not just fans, journalists, lawyers, politicians, other idols, agencies. Scandals erupted across the entire industry. An idol from another company confirmed they'd been forced into a fake relationship. Another admitted to being blackmailed into silence after their sexual orientation was exposed. Trains began speaking out. Some cried, some shouted, some simply said, I thought I was the only one. And through it all, BTS remained silent. For a while, until the 7th day. They walked onto a stage again. A small one. No cameras, just a room full of people who refused to look away. Namjoon stood first. This isn't a performance. Jimin followed. This is an aftermath. Jungkook stood last. This is what remains when truth survives the fire. And together, for the first time in a long time, they sang not to protect a brand, or perform an image, or win an award. They sang because they were still alive, because they chose each other, and because somewhere between the ashes and the silence, they found something no machine could ever manufacture. Freedom. The city felt quieter now, but not in peace. It was the kind of quiet that existed after a disaster. The eerie hush when everything had burned, and people were still trying to decide whether to rebuild or abandon the ruins. Seoul's streets had a strange emptiness to them, even though they were still full of traffic, movement, breath. It was a psychological emptiness, a collective breath held. The vault had detonated across every corner of the entertainment industry. No one came out unscathed. Not labels, not networks, not journalists, not even idols who had once played into the machine willingly. Names dropped, faces exposed, contracts reprinted in full with redacted names that didn't stay redacted for long. Fans, for the first time, looked at their idols not as products, but as survivors. Some couldn't handle that. Others began to ask questions they were never supposed to ask. But BTS didn't speak. Not immediately. After leaking the vault, they had chosen silence not because they were defeated, but because sometimes truth needed time to settle before voices returned. But Jimin couldn't sleep. It wasn't just a PR war. It had been a blueprint for psychological warfare. That night, everything broke again. Social media cracked open with rage. The fandom, once fractured and tentative, erupted. What once had been trending as accusations and doubts became a battlefield of fury. You will not erase them. Expose the system. Unfiltered was the beginning. Fans compiled timelines. Industry watchdogs released analyses. Former employees came forward. One by one, people began to see the patterns that had once been invisible. They started asking why so many idols disappeared suddenly, why mental health was treated like a scandal, Why the brightest stars always seemed the most exhausted. And BTS? They were silent. Not because they had nothing to say, but because this time, the world was speaking for them. Inside the hotel, the members watched it unfold from their phones, their laptops, their hearts. Jimin hadn't spoken all day. Not since the second leak. Not since reading his name mentioned so casually in a corporate strategy doc as a weak emotional link. He sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the marble tile like it held a secret. Jungkook found him there, knelt beside him. They saw me as a liability, Jimin whispered, voice flat. Something to break. You're not a liability. I cried too much, cared too deeply, got too close. You were real. Jimin looked up at him, eyes shining, but not with tears, with something colder. I don't want to survive this. I want to win. Jungkook nodded slowly. Then stop hiding. Later that night, Jimin went live. Not through their collective page. Not through the safe, unfiltered networks. He went live from his personal account. No makeup, no lighting. Just him, in a hotel room, with all his scars. His first words were quiet. You called me a weak link. He looked into the camera, breathing steadily. Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. But a chain only breaks when the links forget they were forged in fire. And I've lived through enough fire to know I didn't break. I burned. And I learned how to live inside it. The stream lasted 21 minutes. He talked about growing up in an industry that sold innocence but punished humanity. About loving in secret. About how fear became a language he spoke fluently, even when smiling. About how he started to forget where Jimin ended and the image began. He ended the stream with one sentence. I'm not your perfect idol, but I was always your truth. By the time he logged off, it had already reached 10 million views. By morning, 50 million. The next day, Jungkook performed an unreleased track on a live stream of his own. No warning, no press. The song was raw, stripped down, acoustic guitar, no filter. The lyrics new, sharp, haunting. They made us dance in cages and told us we were free. Painted stars on the bruises. Said that's how idols bleed. But I'm not dying pretty plain. I'm not fading clean. If this is how I leave you, then I'll leave loud, not serene. No one spoke during the performance. No one could. Afterward, he smiled just once and said, this is who I've always been. Then he cut the feed. The shift was seismic. Suddenly, public conversations no longer centered on whether BTS was right or wrong, but on what the industry had always hidden. K-pop veterans began holding interviews, shedding the years of silence. A famous girl group vocalist revealed her contract had forbidden dating, even platonically, with male idols for 7 years. A former stylist posted a photo of her bruised hand and wrote simply, this was me pulling a trainee out of a closet she locked herself in after being told her body was unmarketable. Jimin sat in silence as he read those stories, one after another. They hadn't started a war. They had revealed it was already happening. They had only given it a name. Inside the hotel, the group gathered one night, no cameras, no staff, no distractions. Namjoon laid out the next steps. They had one final goal now, to create an independent label, a real one, not just a refuge for themselves, but a structure built from everything they wished they'd had. A place where art could breathe without chains, where artists could love without apologies, where humanity didn't cost a career. They would call it home. No acronym, no sleek branding, just one word, a promise. Do you think anyone will sign with us? Taehyung asked, not mocking, genuinely wondering. Namjoon smiled, tired but bright. They already are. And with that, they began again, not as idols, but as architects, not as products, but as people. And this time, there would be no script, no concept, no masks, just music and truth and each other, even if the world tried to silence them again, even if the fire rose higher, because they'd already learned how to sing through smoke. It was Yoongi's idea to film it. He said it like it was nothing at first, tossing the sentence across the hotel kitchen one night while eating cold tteokbokki straight from the container, seated barefoot at the counter. Jin had just finished talking about the mess the entertainment minister had caused after calling BTS agitators disguised as victims in a leaked government email. Namjoon was pacing. Jimin was biting his thumb in the corner again. Jungkook sat on the floor with his head leaned against Jimin's thigh, eyes closed, pretending to sleep but listening to every breath. Taehyung scrolled through articles in bitter silence. Hoseok was curled on the couch, hoodie up, sketchpad on his lap, drawing nothing. "Film everything," Yoongi said again, this time quieter. "The real story, from the inside. Not a documentary, not a press release, not a damage control stunt, just us." Namjoon had paused his pacing. "Film what exactly?" "Everything," Yoongi repeated. "Us building home. The war, the cracks, the fucking grief, the phone calls we don't return, the bruises no one sees, the people who left, the ones who stayed, the pain of turning your back on the machine that made you and the horror of realizing it owns pieces of your soul you may never get back. Film all of that. Let the whole world watch it. Let them watch us bleed without looking away this time." For a while, no one said anything. Then Jimin finally looked up and said, "And what if it ruins us more?" Yoongi met his eyes across the room. "What's left to ruin?" The next day, cameras arrived, but not the kind they used to know. No sterile production crew, no clean white trailers, no scripts. Just a team of 5 young, unknown, unpaid, except in trust artists who had followed the Unfiltered collective from the beginning. People who had reached out offering not help, but eyes. People who said, "You don't need a camera. You need a witness." The first day of filming, Jimin almost walked out. They started with him. The questions were simple. Too simple. "What's your name?" He'd frozen. It was absurd, almost laughable. But he couldn't say it, because for the first time, he realized he didn't know if they meant the name Fans, Screamed, or the name he whispered in bathrooms at 3 a.m. when the makeup was off and the mask had cracked. He finally said, "Jimin." Then after a breath, "Park Jimin." Then softer, "Just me." And that set the tone. They filmed everything. The meetings, the breakdowns, the quiet walks around the hotel garden, the phone calls from former idols who wanted to join home but were afraid, the letters, the death threats, the nights when no one could sleep because the weight of what they'd done still sat on their chests like lead. One night, Jungkook confessed on camera, voice low, eyes red. "I used to dream of a solo career, world tours, Billboard, stadiums, the whole thing. And I still want it. I do. But not if I have to cut parts of myself off to get there. Not if it means leaving Jimin in the dark. Not if it means smiling through silence. I'd rather sing in underground clubs with the lights off than win awards with a lie." Later, Jimin sat in front of the same camera and whispered, "I never wanted to be anyone's scandal. I just wanted to be held without guilt." That line spread across the world before the documentary was even edited. A production assistant accidentally leaked it on a fan Discord. It was clipped, subtitled, and reposted across TikTok and Twitter within hours. The moment became a viral audio. "I just wanted to be held without guilt." It was stitched with video montages, fan art, protest footage, and slow-motion shots of the Seoul skyline over piano ballads. And while the internet wept over a single sentence, the machine started hunting again. At first, it was just whispers. Then offers. Big ones. Global labels offered deals. Streaming giants dangled exclusive contracts for the home label's debut project. Media networks offered apology interviews. One American late-night host even joked, BTS started a revolution and still managed to trend higher than the Super Bowl talk about talent. But BTS didn't bite. Namjoon refused most of the calls before they even reached the others. The group had agreed unanimously. No rebuilding through the same doors that once trapped them. They would rebuild in the dirt if they had to. But then came the twist no one expected. An idol from one of Korea's biggest current groups, still under contract, still active, posted a handwritten letter on Instagram. It wasn't subtle. They wrote, "I've watched BTS be beaten publicly for doing what I've only ever had the courage to dream about. I've kissed someone I love behind locked studio doors. I've deleted every trace. I've smiled through rehearsals after nights I nearly didn't survive. I can't do it anymore. I want what they have. I want to live. Even if it kills my career, I want to live." Within the hour, they were suspended by their label. Within the next 24, they'd been cut from brand deals, unfollowed by peers, and scrubbed from promotional posters. And within 48, the gates broke open. Dozens more followed. Not just idols. Trains, vocal coaches, backup dancers, stylists, media interns, each telling stories that echoed the same rhythm. We weren't broken. We were used. The Home Collective's inbox crashed from the flood of submissions. BTS watched it unfold, not as stars, but as soldiers. This wasn't fandom anymore. This was liberation. But liberation always has a cost. Jimin woke up one morning to news that his father had been hospitalized after a sudden attack of vertigo outside his office. No one could say if it was stress or something more. Jimin flew home that day. The press followed. When he arrived at the hospital, cameras were already waiting outside. He walked in with his head down. Inside, his father smiled weakly, IV in his arm. "You always knew how to make a mess," he said. Jimin sat beside him and took his hand. "You're not angry? I'm scared. But not of what you did, of what they're still willing to do to you." Jimin swallowed hard. His father looked at him for a long time before speaking again. "Do what you came to do. But promise me one thing. Anything. When they try to bury you, dig your way out. Again. As many times as it takes." Jimin nodded, tears finally falling. He returned to Seoul that night, and when he walked back into the suite, the cameras were still rolling. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to them and said, "Start filming." And then, "You want the story? Here it is." They filmed a 10-hour block of unscripted footage, each member, one by one. Stories they hadn't told before. Jin talked about suicidal thoughts in 2018. Yoongi confessed to near-complete emotional shutdown during the pandemic. Namjoon shared a private journal entry about wanting to disappear in the middle of the Map of the Soul tour. Taehyung admitted to being in love once with someone he was forced to cut out of his life to protect a brand deal. Hoseok talked about the pressure to be the bright one and how it crushed him in silence. Jimin told the story of the night he nearly left the dorm for good. And Jungkook? He looked at the camera and said, "If they end me for loving him, then let them end me. At least I'll die singing his name." They released the footage as a docu-series, not a film. 17 episodes, unfiltered, untouched, each titled after a sentence pulled from the footage. The first episode was called, "Let the Whole World Watch." And the world did, more than they ever had before. Not screaming, not idolizing, but witnessing. For the first time, truly seeing. And in being seen, they finally began to heal. Rain was falling hard again, the same way it had the night the safe house was attacked. Same sound, same rhythm. But now, they weren't in hiding. They weren't caged by silence or fear. The cameras weren't held by strangers anymore, but by people they trusted with their lives, people who had become invisible extensions of their movement. The world had shifted on its axis, but the storm hadn't passed. It had simply changed its shape. Yoongi stood by the window, arms crossed, staring into the black glass as the rain streaked down in crooked lines. His reflection was barely visible, almost ghost-like. Behind him, the others were gathered around the conference table in what had once been the hotel's abandoned rooftop restaurant. Now, it was the beating heart of their rebellion. Laptops were open. Walls were covered in sticky notes, handwritten timelines, names, and quotes from other whistleblowers. Every corner of the room breathed with purpose and exhaustion. Taehyung was seated on the floor, sketching something with a thick black marker on the wall, another mural of broken wings and open mouths screaming into the void. Hoseok leaned against a support column, headphones on, nodding to a track that was still raw, unfinished. Jin sat beside Namjoon, editing a script for the next home public statement, while softly eating dried mangoes, one after another, like he wasn't living through the slow collapse of an empire. Jimin wasn't there yet. Neither was Jungkook. Yoongi lit a cigarette and turned slightly. "If they don't show up soon, we're scrapping tonight's release." Namjoon didn't look up. "They'll come." "They've never missed a meeting," Jin added, eyes still scanning the screen. "But this isn't just a meeting." Yoongi exhaled, smoke curling in the air like punctuation. "It's a line in the sand." Namjoon nodded, finally lifting his gaze. "We've been burning quietly. Tonight, we burn in public." At exactly 8:57 p.m., the elevator dinged. The doors opened. Jungkook walked in first, soaked from head to toe, black hoodie dripping, hair matted to his forehead. His knuckles were bruised. Jimin followed close behind, drier but pale, his jaw set like it had been carved from steel. No one asked what had happened. Not yet. Jungkook tossed something onto the table, a phone, its screen cracked. Jimin spoke first. "We were ambushed on the way here, cornered outside the studio." Namjoon stood. "By who?" "3 men. Suits, no IDs. One had an earpiece. They didn't introduce themselves. Just told us we had one last chance to walk away." "Did they touch you?" Yoongi's voice had sharpened into something lethal. "No," Jungkook said. "They weren't stupid, but they wanted us to be afraid." Jimin sat down, hands clenched. "They said the next episode of the docuseries can't air. Not unless we want to see people we love dragged down with us." "They mentioned families," Jungkook added. "Not ours, theirs." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and laid it on the table. A printed spreadsheet. Names, dates, contracts, clauses. Yoongi picked it up, scanned it. "These are debut contracts from other groups. 3 of them are from rookies who joined the Home Collective last week," Jimin said. "And they're being threatened with retroactive breach of conduct if they don't cut ties with us." "Retroactive?" Jin repeated. "That's not even legal?" Yoongi finished. "No, but it doesn't matter. It'll hold long enough to crush them in court before anyone can intervene." Namjoon's voice was low, steady. "Then we go louder." "They'll retaliate," Hosek said. "They'll leak things. Then let them." Jungkook's eyes burned. "We stop hiding. Not just for us. For them. For the kids who are still living in dressing rooms with surveillance cams above their mirrors. For the girls who've been told to lose 10 pounds or lose their future. For the ones who've signed their names away before they even turned 18. There was a beat of silence. Then Taehyung spoke, quiet but firm. "Then let's make tonight the one they can't recover from. At 9:00 p.m. sharp." They went live. Not on YouTube, not on Weverse. On every platform they'd helped build into the home ecosystem. Every underground network, every artist forum, every fan-to-fan relay. The stream was titled Episode 14. You Can't Cancel the Truth. They didn't open with music. They opened with a confession. Namjoon stepped forward, eyes straight into the lens. "Tonight, we're not showing you a performance. We're showing you the price of honesty." The lights were low. No stage. Just a circle of chairs. Raw footage played across the screen, interviews from young trainees who had escaped the system but had never been heard. A girl, 17, describing how she was denied debut after refusing to undergo double eyelid surgery. A boy, 20, talking about being told to flirt with senior idols for influence. A dancer, mid-20s, recounting being assaulted backstage and told by a manager to smile through it during the live performance. Then the feed cut back to BTS. Jimin stood, hand shaking but voice steady. "I stayed silent about so many things because I thought that's what love was. I thought protecting the image of this industry meant protecting the people inside it. But silence isn't protection. It's permission." He paused, breath-catching. "They told me I was too emotional, that I'd never survive unless I learned how to be colder. I tried, but that's when I started dying." Jungkook took his hand, interlaced fingers, the world watching. Then Jungkook spoke. "I never signed up to be your fantasy. I signed up to sing, to create, to share. And somewhere along the way, I was told that loving someone would ruin all of that. That being real would destroy what we built. But I'm still here. We're still here. And the only thing being honest has ruined are the people who built careers on our silence. More clips, emails, screenshots, voice memos, agencies using psychological profiles to control artists' personas, lists of which artists were allowed to cry publicly, internal memos stating which idols were expendable based on market value drops." The final segment was Taehyung. He sat in silence for a long time before speaking. "There was a night, years ago, after a show in Osaka. I looked out at the sea of light sticks, and I smiled like I was supposed to. But inside, I was praying the stage would collapse beneath me just so I could stop pretending. That's not drama. That's survival." He looked into the camera with eyes stripped of all performance. "I survived, but I don't want the next kid to just survive. I want them to live." They ended the stream with no outro, just a black screen. One sentence. If this ends us, then at least we ended with the truth. The impact was nuclear. Within hours, the major broadcasting station that aired the original smear campaign pulled the episode and issued an apology. 3 major entertainment CEOs resigned. A government investigation was launched. The entertainment minister was suspended pending review. Fans rallied in the streets, not screaming for comebacks, screaming for reform. Signs filled downtown Seoul. Art is not a cage. Love is not a scandal. You can't cancel the truth. BTS didn't appear publicly for a week after that. Not out of fear, out of strategy. They let the wave carry itself. They let the people speak. They watched from rooftops, from studio corners, from borrowed rehearsal rooms where music still came out of speakers that were too old, too scratched, but still loud enough to matter. And then, on the 8th day, they walked into a press conference. No label behind them. No brand. Just them. Seven men. 7 artists. 7 survivors. Namjoon stepped up to the podium. Ask your question. A reporter stood. What do you say to those who claim you've destroyed the very industry that made you? Namjoon didn't flinch. We didn't destroy it. We revealed it. Another reporter. What happens now? Jin leaned into his mic, smiled gently. We keep going. The final question came from the back. Do you think this is sustainable? Jimin's voice was soft. It doesn't have to be easy. It just has to be real. And with that, they walked out. Through flashbulbs, through judgment, through awe, and into a future they were no longer afraid of building. Because they weren't idols anymore. They were architects of something new. And the world was finally ready to listen. The days that followed the press conference were full of noise. Not just the physical kind, the camera shutters, the journalists' questions, the roaring fans lining the streets, the buzz of late-night news panels trying to decide whether BTS were fallen icons or phoenixes rising. There was another kind of noise now, louder and far more difficult to escape. The noise inside. Inside rooms, inside hearts, inside the spaces that had once been sacred. Inside Jimin's head. He sat alone in the practice studio they had claimed as their own, the one deep in the basement of an abandoned media school downtown, now transformed into home's creative center. The lights were dimmed. A single bulb above the mirror hummed like it was struggling to stay alive. The floor beneath him still carried dust from a day-old rehearsal. His sweatshirt was soaked through with sweat, but he hadn't danced in an hour. He just sat there, on the floor, with his knees pulled to his chest, his hands clenched in his hair. The others were upstairs, working on the next home project. A collaborative album not under their names, but made entirely for the debut artists who had come to home as refugees from a system that once promised them stardom and gave them silence. The album would feature stories that had never made it to air, songs written in dorm rooms at 2 a.m., melodies hummed during mental breakdowns and recorded on broken phones. It wasn't commercial. It wasn't designed to chart. It was truth. Set to music. Jimin should have been there. He wasn't. He couldn't be. Because the night before, someone had broken into his mother's apartment. They hadn't taken anything. They had written one word on the mirror. Liar. The cops had been called. Security footage found nothing. The building's entrance logs had been wiped. The only trace of the intrusion was the word in red lipstick on the mirror, and the quiet panic Jimin's mother tried not to show as she cleaned it with shaking hands. Jimin didn't tell anyone at first, but when Jungkook had seen his hands shaking while making tea, he'd pressed him against the counter and asked him to say something. Anything. Please. Jimin had only said, "It's not over. They're still coming." Now, in the studio, he felt it again, that hollow pit in his chest, the one that had started years ago when he first realized he would never be allowed to love freely, that no matter how much he gave, it would never be enough to buy back his humanity. Footsteps echoed. He didn't lift his head. He knew them. Jungkook walked in, paused, then slowly approached. No camera crew, no microphone. Just the boy who had once looked at him across a rehearsal floor and smiled like he knew a secret the world had no right to own. "I thought I'd find you here," Jungkook said softly. Jimin didn't speak. Jungkook crouched in front of him. "Why didn't you tell us about your mom?" Still, silence. "I'm not mad," Jungkook added. "Just scared. For you. For what you're holding on your own." Jimin lifted his head finally. His eyes were rimmed red. his mouth a thin line. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to become our next headline. Jungkook blinked. Jimin, don't. His voice cracked. Don't act like this isn't what we signed up for. We didn't sign up for them threatening our families. We signed up to be sacrifices. Jimin snapped. Whether we knew it or not, whether we were dancing or confessing or kissing or breathing, we were always going to be the scapegoats when the system cracked. You know it. I know it. I'm just trying to protect what little I still can. Jungkook didn't flinch. He reached forward, cupped Jimin's face, gently forced him to meet his eyes. We didn't survive everything just to learn how to disappear again. Jimin's breath hitched. Then tell me how to live with this, he whispered. Tell me how to keep showing up when every time we speak, someone else pays the price. You think I haven't read the forums? Seen what they're saying about you? About us? About your family? About your future? They don't know me, Jungkook said. They don't need to know you. They just need to believe the lie longer than the truth can survive. Jungkook sat down beside him, shoulder to shoulder, both of them facing the cracked mirror. I'd rather live in the wreckage of honesty than be crowned king in a kingdom of silence. Jimin looked down at his hands. They were still trembling. Jungkook took one of them, interlaced their fingers, and Jimin finally whispered, then don't let go. Upstairs, Namjoon was mid-sentence when he stopped, turning his head toward the hallway. Yoongi looked up. What is it? Journalists, Namjoon muttered. Again, 2 vans parked across the street, unmarked, same license patterns as before. Taehyung stood. We need to move. No, Namjoon said. We need to speak. Again, Jin put down his pen. What are you thinking? We go live again. Tonight. Yoongi raised an eyebrow. They'll call it a stunt. Let them. It's not about us anymore. It's about them. The artists, the kids, the staff, the ones who are speaking and getting silenced for it. We don't wait anymore. We push forward. Or this movement dies in its sleep. No one argued. They prepared the room. It wasn't polished. It wasn't planned. But it was ready. That night, BTS went live again. 7 chairs. 7 voices. Thousands watching. Namjoon spoke first. They think we'll burn out. They think they can wait us out. But what they forget is, we've already burned. And we're still here. Jin followed. They broke into homes. They sent threats. They weaponized love. And still here we are. Yoongi. We're not fearless. We're just done being silent. Hoseok. We didn't ask for this war. But we won't lose it by pretending it's not happening. Taehyung. You called us traitors. We call ourselves witnesses. Jungkook. You tried to shame us into erasure. But you can't erase what's already written in every kid who grew up believing they had to be perfect to be seen. Jimin stood last. The room held its breath. They said this would end us. But what if this is just the beginning of us? He looked into the lens like it owed him something. You don't get to decide when our story ends. We do. That stream broke every record they never cared to break. Again. But this time, they didn't celebrate. They went back to work. Back to building. The first home showcase was scheduled. No stages, just stories. It was announced with a single sentence. This is not the end of us. And when they walked out that night, under dim lights, with raw voices and scarred hands, they weren't idols. They were architects of their future, of an industry reborn. And as Jimin looked across the crowd and saw the unfiltered sea of faces, some crying, some screaming, some just watching quietly, he reached for Jungkook's hand without thinking. And this time, they didn't let go. Not for cameras, not for spectacle, just because they could. And the world finally let them.